Hello everyone, and welcome to this year's complete collection tour. My name is Emmanuel, and this is my frog room, where I currently keep 70 poison dart frogs and some various other small animals. I have a lot of new additions since the last time I made a frog room tour like this, and I honestly think the frog room looks better than it ever has before, so I really hope you enjoy. I keep most of my animals in my bedroom, however I do also have a few vivariums right outside of it, and we're actually going to start there since that's where I have the most new stuff. First we have this bureau with two exoteras, measuring 45 by 45 by 90 centimeters or 18 by 18 by 36 inches. The one to the right houses my 11-year-old crested gecko Francelina, who was my first exotic pet when I got her back in 2015. This vivarium has been through many versions, but now I'm finally happy with it and she seems to be thriving too. The background is made up of cork bark panels and she's also got some large cork branches. Unfortunately, she's relatively heavy and she's not very kind to the plants, so a lot of them have bent leaves and stuff like that, but that's quite normal for a crested gecko vivarium. To the left of her, I have the dart frog vivarium that I set up on the channel 8 months ago. I will leave a link to that video in the description down below in case you want to check it out. It still houses my Ranitomea amazonica French Guiana pair. They used to be a trio, but one of the females mysteriously died a few months ago, but luckily the other two frogs have seemed fine since then and have started laying eggs again. The vivarium itself has been doing really well and I'm extremely happy with the moss growth in it. My favorite plant in my entire collection has to be this beautiful Anthurium warocquinum, which has finally started pushing out large leaves. In case some of you noticed from the overview shots, I do also keep a small, low-budget aquarium here. I occasionally raise some dart frog tadpoles in it, but for now it's completely empty aside from some snails that made their way in there somehow. Next up, I have this rack where I house froglets and a few thumbnail frogs. In the top row, I have 3 exoteras measuring 30 by 30 by 45 centimeters or 12 by 12 by 18 inches, which is considered an acceptable size for small thumbnail dart frogs, but not for bigger species. Last year, this shelf was occupied by an old aquarium that I used as a vivarium, but I got rid of it because the top opening tank really was a pain to take care of and everything looks much better now with the front opening vivariums instead. These first two vivariums are both completely empty. The left one has only been set up for a few days and the middle one has been up and running for about 6 weeks. Hopefully they will grow in nicely during the upcoming months. The vivarium to the right of them houses my 4 Ranitomea reticulata. This is one of the smallest dart frogs out there, but they are also some of the most beautiful in my opinion. Once the vivarium to the left is more grown in, the plan is to split this group into 2 vivariums to hopefully pick out a pair and get them to start breeding, and because 4 of them together is definitely pushing the limits in this vivarium size. But I'm unsure if I even have a female in the first place, so we will see how the breeding goes. You might remember from my last collection tour that I used to house this group in a bigger vivarium, but the problem was that the vivarium wasn't fruit fly proof, and since this species isn't very active at feeding time, most flies ended up escaping before being eaten, so I had to move them here for that reason. It's definitely smaller than what would be optimal, but once I split the group it will be better. The bottom row consists of 3 vivariums that are 30 centimeters or 12-inch cubes, and this is where I house a lot of my froglets from my own breeding. I put all of my froglets in bioactive vivariums right away, and I keep them just like my adult frogs, except for the fact that their vivariums are smaller and don't have a background, which makes everything a bit easier for me when it's time to catch them. Of course, these vivariums aren't big enough for any adult dart frogs by any means, but they're completely fine for growing out froglets in my opinion, since it's only temporary and the froglets aren't really territorial or anything like that. In the vivarium to the left, I have some froglets from my Ranitomea amazonica and some from my Phyllobates vittatus. This amazonica froglet actually just left the water a few days ago. I wasn't able to get any footage of the vittatus froglets in this specific vivarium, but I have 2 other vivariums with vittatus froglets and a breeding group of adults, so you will see plenty of that species later in the video. In the middle, I have some froglets from my Dendrobates tinctorius assyrius and my Dendrobates leucomelias Guiana banded. 2 absolutely stunning species. This is probably a good time to add the recurrent disclaimer about mixing species. These two species should never be kept together as adults, due to the risk for hybrids and the fact that Tinctorius are usually quite territorial, but as froglets, neither of those problems exist. Mixing species is possible in some cases, but it's never recommended unless you really know what you're doing, and I made a whole video about that just a few months ago where I cover it in more detail. Finally, I have this vivarium that houses some Epiphytbetis anthonii riodaule froglets and a few more Vitadus froglets. The orange striped ones are the Vitadus and the brown ones are anthonii. This vivarium is always really fun to look at during feeding time because the frogs in here are very active and have a large appetite. It's kind of strange to show you all the froglets before showing you my adult breeding groups of each species, but I've already started out here on this rack, so there's no going back. Before we continue with the tour, if you're enjoying the video so far, please consider subscribing and giving the video a like. That really goes a long way on YouTube. Now, let's get back to the video. Now it's time to move into the main room, and we're starting out with this vivarium that houses my Dendrobates tinctorius assyrius pair. This is a classic dart frog in the hobby, and they're always extremely bold and outgoing, not to mention their absolutely beautiful blue coloration. This is the non-fruit fly proof vivarium I was talking about earlier, and I think Dendrobates tinctorius are the perfect inhabitants for such a setup, since they will come right out and eat almost all the fruit flies immediately during feeding time, instead of waiting for an hour like my Ranitomeas always did. This setup houses one of my favorite plant species in my collection, which is this Monstera obliqua Peruvian form, but it's growing extremely slowly, so it hasn't gotten the beautiful fenestrated leaves yet. On the other side of the room I have my tarantula rack, and this has been very improved during the last few months with some homemade glass enclosures that I'm actually very proud of. If you don't want to see any spiders, you can skip to this timestamp for more poison dart frogs. In the top left vivarium I have 3 Monocenthropus balfouri, also known as the Socotra Island blue baboon tarantula. They always reside in their web castle, but I have some old pictures of them from when they had just moved in there. This is one of the few tarantula species that can actually live in groups, which makes them very interesting to keep. This was my first ever naturalistic arid setup, and I think I did fairly well, but my efforts are barely even visible anymore now that they've covered everything with web. In the middle, I keep a Chromatopelma cyanopubescens female, also known as the green bottle blue tarantula. This species is a very heavy webber, and I have no doubts in my mind that she will eventually web everything up more than she already has. To quote-unquote plant this vivarium, I just dug up some tufts of grass, placed them in here and let them die, and I think that made for a pretty decent aesthetic along with the wood pieces, but the idea definitely looked better in my head than the final result did. To the right, I have a female Psammopeus erminia, or the Venezuelan sun tiger tarantula, which is a very unique and underappreciated tarantula in my opinion, with a stunning combination of velvety and orange coloration. She has her web castle behind the cork bark piece in the far back, but she's actually sitting out in the open quite often as well. Finally, we have my Acanthus geniculata female Selma on the lower shelf. She was my first tarantula that I got back in 2017, and she was less than a centimeter then, so she has actually grown a lot since. I fed her a big hissing cockroach this morning, so here's a clip of that. She's by far the biggest tarantula I have at the moment, but she's still much smaller than my boy Jöns Jakob, my Theraphos blondie that unfortunately passed away of old age a few months ago. This glass enclosure is the only one on the shelf that I haven't built myself, but it looked similar enough so I let it stay. These homemade glass enclosures on the top shelf have 2 main tweaks to them. One is that they're narrow and very deep, measuring 25 by 38 by 35 centimeters. This lets me put as many as possible in a row while still using up the entire area of the shelf. The other is that they only have a single sliding glass door instead of 2. This gets rid of the ugly glass overlap in the middle that they have in normal vivariums with sliding glass doors. However, when the front glass is clean, it always looks like the door is gone, which has made my heart drop on multiple occasions. We're saving the best for last, so before checking out these 3 display vivariums, we're going to have a look at my tadpoles and a few more froglets. This is my new tadpole rack, which I'm very happy with, since it takes up a lot less room than the plastic cups that I previously used. It's not very stocked at the moment, but there is a row with Leucomelas tadpoles and some Amazonica tadpoles in this communal bin at the bottom. Here I have 2 plastic tubs with froglets in them. The left one has been set up for a year, and it currently houses a few Dendrobates tinctorius assyrius froglets, while the right one has only been set up for a few weeks and houses some Phyllobates vitadus and Epiphytbetis anthonii froglets. In here, I kind of just put all of the plants that I have, but don't have room for in any of my display vivariums, and then I just let them grow out of control in here. If you're wondering what's up with the plastic cup, I have a Nutricularia species planted in there, and no, that frog isn't trapped in there with it, he can jump out whenever he likes. Now it's time for the final froglet tub of the video. This plastic bin houses a few young Dendrobates leucomelas guiana banded froglets that just left the water a few weeks ago. The glass enclosure to the right of them is completely empty aside from a few plants. Now we're moving on to the final row of display vivariums. To the left I keep my breeding group of Phyllobates vittatus. These are very underrated dart frogs that are fun to keep and among the prettiest in the hobby in my opinion, and they are also very cheap and readily available, which is a bonus. The only downside is that they can be a bit shy, but if you watch my video about dealing with shy frogs and follow all the tips and tricks in it, they will definitely become bolder with age. Next we have my biggest vivarium. It's 90 by 45 by 90 centimeters or 36 by 18 by 36 inches, and it currently houses a group of 6 Epipedobates anthonii riodaule. Epipedobates anthonii is one of, if not the best beginner dart frog in my opinion, and I recently made a video all about them, which you will find a link to in the description if you want to learn more. This locale in particular is a very special one to me, because there's a colony of them free roaming in the greenhouses of Gothenburg's botanical garden, a place of which I have a lot of fun memories trying to find as many frogs as possible. This vivarium was my first serious rainforest display vivarium, which you can definitely notice on the cocoa fiber background, which isn't intact in some places. For that reason I don't use that material anymore. Last year one of the branches started to loosen because the background didn't hold up, so I removed the old branches and added new ones, which aren't attached to the background in any way. I'm quite satisfied with the current planting, but I don't think the build as a whole is very durable in the long run, and at some point I will probably have to rip it all out and restart from scratch with a new background, but that day is definitely not today. Finally, we have this beautiful vivarium housing my Dendrobates leucomelas guiana banded breeding group. This vivarium has a hydrolon background and a big wood centerpiece, on which the moss and Mercravia have really taken off during the last year. And the Begonia prismaticarpa and the unknown ferns on the wall definitely elevate the setup to the next level in my opinion. This vivarium was set up in late 2020, and even though it was very sparsely planted and looked kind of boring for the first year, it was definitely worth the wait, because I don't think a vivarium would look this good after 2.5 years if it was overplanted from the start. The frogs themselves are doing really well in here and I get plenty of offspring from them, as you have seen throughout the video. My original breeding pair of this species were actually my first poison dart frogs in 2019. In the last year, I've also introduced 2 of their froglets to this vivarium to make it a group of 4, and they're all coming along really well. Those were all the animals I had at the moment, so that wraps it up for this year's collection tour. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing the video with a couple of friends, because it's completely free and it's a great way for you to support my channel. I make plenty of beginner-friendly dart frog content covering various aspects of dart frog keeping in great detail. If you have any questions or suggestions for videos you would like to see from me, please let me know in the comment section down below. I read all the comments and it's always really fun to hear from you. This time I didn't really mention that many plant species by name throughout the tour, but if you're curious about the name of a certain plant you saw in the video, just ask me in the comment section. If you want to see more of my animal room, feel free to check out my Instagram page at gecko_geek06, where I post more regular updates on my personal collection than I do here. Thank you for watching.